We've all been there. You're sitting in a lecture with a professor who's reading PowerPoint slides, densely packed with text, and you're scrambling to take everything in. You leave wondering if you'll remember anything. Maybe you even thought about how the information could have been presented better. Well, it turns out there's a whole body of research on multimedia learning, and it applies not only to slideshow presentations, but to any media format, including books, audio, and video presentations. Most people process information based on what they hear and see. So if you're attending a lecture where a professor is talking directly about what's on screen, that information goes into your sensory memory, where it remains for about half a second or less. It stays for such a short period of time because there's such a massive amount of sensory information all around you that it's only possible to focus your attention on a fraction of it. For example, you probably know that the fan in your fridge or freezer is on, but you usually don't notice it when you're cooking. Now, if you focus on specific sensory information, it enters your working memory, where it sticks around for a little longer, about 30 seconds. Working memory ignores useless background noise, like filler words or things that you already know, taking in only the most relevant details. Comparing these details with things you already have learned solidifies that newfound knowledge, organizing and storing it so it's easier to recall. So the next time someone asks you what you're thinking about, they're asking what's in your working memory at that moment. Your long-term memory is where information is stored after you've processed it, and it remains there until it deteriorates slowly over time. With this model of learning in mind, you can use a variety of strategies to optimize how you learn using instructional media. We're going to focus on a typical lecture presentation, but the ideas can be applied to various media formats. To make this concrete, let's start out by fixing this PowerPoint slide. Okay, our first big task is to get rid of all the extra information and organize the material into a logical way. To start, let's remove anything that doesn't directly relate to the main point. That means getting rid of unnecessary text and images. Okay, the text is about gas exchange in the lungs, so let's find an image that shows a good close-up of that. Ah, that's better. Now, let's trim down the words so they're outlining just the individual steps. Let's also double check that we have parallelism, meaning that all the phrases are written in the same way. That makes it easier to understand each step of oxygen's journey into the blood, which in turn gives us a better sense of the overall process. When there are multiple colors on a screen, it can be distracting. It's best to make the words in a single color and only change the color for specific things you want to emphasize. Occasionally, you may need to use arrows or boxes, but that can also be distracting, so it's okay to use them sparingly or to simply bold or highlight words. This may seem picky, but it's good communication that leads to good learning. In this example, we can actually get rid of all the text and just show it visually. You can see we've also visually enhanced the presenter's narration without just repeating what they're saying. Ideally, you want to minimize the amount of on-screen text by narrating the information, leaving just visual images along with a few keywords and ideas on screen. We've also arranged the on-screen text so that it appears within or next to the appropriate image. This tells the learner how these words relate to the image. It's also helpful to make sure that the visual information is presented alongside the audio information so that a person can see the image at the same time you start explaining what it represents. If you're handy with a pencil, you can even make your own images. Remember, you don't have to be a good artist to have good images in your slides. There are lots of great images licensed under public domain or Creative Commons licenses. Don't forget, some videos are also licensed under Creative Commons, and you can use images from those videos in your presentation. Okay, so our next big task is to avoid overloading students with too much information too quickly. This is especially challenging with complicated topics. A good way to start is by dividing up complicated materials into short, bite-sized concepts. It's helpful to allow learners to focus on part of a concept before revealing the larger picture. With slideshows, one way to simplify a complicated process is to spread it over several slides and use headings to help orient the student. Let's break this slide down. Let's take this slide on glomerular filtration and divide it up, focusing one slide on each part of the Bowman's capsule. Doing things this way, you're focusing on foundational concepts before launching into more complicated ones. In other words, starting with the small stuff and working up to the bigger picture. For example, you can define new terms up front before using them in the context of a more complicated discussion. In this case, we can zoom in on the squamous epithelium first, and then zoom out to show you where you'll find that layer of cells within the Bowman capsule. You can also use multimedia, for example, showing a short video or having learners work with a physical model to prime their minds for a more complicated topic. In addition to content, it's important to think about presentation style to boost engagement and motivation. When you're talking to an audience, be friendly and conversational rather than formal and stiff. Written language tends to be more formal than speech. You don't usually write a paper using the same phrases and sentence structure as you would when speaking, so don't speak the way you write. For example, you can use first and second person language like I, me, you, we, and our. You can also make sentences shorter and more to the point, as well as using words or phrases regularly used in speech, such as the words like or so at the beginning of a sentence. Body language helps too. Rather than standing stiffly with your eyes glued to your presentation, it's helpful to make eye contact with your audience, show various facial expressions like smiling or laughing, and use hand gestures to emphasize key points. Drawing illustrations in front of learners while you're talking is a great way to foster engagement too, as it's more visually stimulating than just showing pre-drawn images. Oh, and a final tip, if you're making a video to post online, don't have a computer speak for you. The human voice can be very engaging, so try to sound like yourself and let your personality come through,
rather than sounding like a robot.
Alright, as a quick recap, most learners have two primary senses, auditory and visual, that play a dominant role in how we take in new information. To optimize multimedia learning, you can remove extraneous information, break complex ideas down into smaller chunks, and speak in a casual and friendly way.
Hey guys, Vince here. So this is pretty basic stuff on giving a presentation, right? But working on your communication skills is so important, especially when you're trying to teach your audience a difficult subject. And the basics will get you a long ways. So I hope that today's video was useful to you. Today's script was written and voiced by Kyle Slynn. It was reviewed by Professor Richard Mayer, who we need to give a big thank you to. Professor Mayer is a very well-respected psychologist. He works specifically with applying the science of learning to education. So it was a huge help to us to have him take time out of his busy schedule to help us put this video together. Thanks again. The script was also reviewed by Risha Desai, Andrea Day, and Fergus Baird. As always, if you'd like to support the creation of more of these kinds of videos, check us out at osmosis.org. There we have all sorts of great tools that'll help you learn medicine. These include unreleased videos, tens of thousands of flashcards and practice questions, study schedulers, and other great things. If you'd like a second opinion, check us out on Facebook. You guys have been absolutely wonderful to us. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews and a bunch of lovely testimonials from people explaining to us exactly how osmosis has helped them learn medicine. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.